On today's show, a new 12-core chip for the iMac Pro. What now? USB-C in iPhones, Apple's own eGPUs, 10th gen iPad redesigns, MacBook Pro demand delaying Mac Minis, automation on the Mac, and being an Apple dad. I'm iCaveDave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 1300 UTC, like the video, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. So, in a tweet yesterday, DylanDKT said that the iMac Pro will have a higher chip configuration than the M1 Max that we saw in October's MacBook Pros. But honestly, it makes no sense to me. The tweet says that it will be 12 cores. That's up from 10 cores in the M1 Pro and Max, but why? And what are those cores? The only config that makes any kind of sense in my head is that Apple has maybe realised that it doesn't need efficiency cores in the versions of the chips that never use a battery, so all of these could be performance cores. Now, the M1 Pro and Max use 8 performance cores right now with a pair of efficiency cores to make up its 10, but it feels like if we were to keep the 2 efficiency cores and just add 2 more performance cores to make up our 12, is there really enough of a performance delta to justify a completely new chip design? I'd lean towards a no. That just seems like an awful lot of extra design, fragmentation, and fuss for a relatively small performance boost. Now, we did hear about a 12-core chip before. Early rumours of the M1X suggested 8 performance and 4 efficiency cores. CPU Monkey even said that they'd got their hands on a leaked model and posted performance benchmarks, which I said looked fake to me. MaxTech even took my thumbnail from that video into one of theirs and said that I was wrong, and CPU Monkey was definitely a genuine leak.
Now, some people have said that that leak was fake, but I actually believe it could be true, because last year, a few days before the Apple Silicon Mac event, CPU Monkey actually leaked the performance of the A14X chip, which is what we thought the M1 would have been named, but of course it ended up being the M1. The leaked numbers, although very optimistic at the time, ended up being really close to the true performance that we got with the M1.
Sorry guys, but that wouldn't make any sense either, because more efficiency cores wouldn't be needed for a desktop. So the only thing that kind of makes sense to me would be all performance cores. 12 of those would be around 50% faster than the M1 Pro and Max. I mean, okay, maybe 45%, but still a respectable difference, and perhaps that 12 performance core chip would then be the one that gets duoed and quadroed into the new Mac Pros. But again, everything we've heard about that, even before the M1 Pro and M1 Max, were revealed to actually be 10 cores lined up with a multiple 10-core, 2 efficiency and 8 performance core chip. 20 and 40 core configurations with 4 or 8 efficiency cores. So here's my take. Perhaps that code snippet is actually a pre-production model that we use in different hardware during testing. We've already seen evidence that the M1 Max die has got capacity to link to a fabric interconnect to another die, so it seems likely that a duo is at least coming. Could this be a very binned down duo? I mean, I guess so. But if there's another chip, I think Apple might be eliminating those efficiency cores for the desktop. And if so, maybe there will be an option for the Mac Mini as well. At least for those who can afford it. So let me know down in the comments what you think is the situation here. DylanDKT, I respect you massively, but this one just doesn't kind of sit right with me. I could well be wrong, and I probably am, but it just doesn't feel right. And now a quick favour before we move on to iCave Answers. You might know that my youngest son Ted is coming to the end of his leukemia treatment right now. He's got about 3 months left to go, but he also loves dancing, and he's in a competition on Facebook, and I'm going to abuse my position here to help him win some dance stuff. So I'd really appreciate it if anyone watching on the day this is released would go to the link in the description and just like his picture in the comments. Thank you for indulging my abuse of audience, and back to the show. The Waffball asks, iCave Answers, do you think that the iPhone will ever get USB-C, or will Apple go portless first? Now, my thoughts on this in the past have been that Apple will probably go portless rather than going to USB-C. I know that a lot of people want USB-C or Thunderbolt in their iPhones in terms of transferring data, but I actually think that the MagSafe standard is probably going to add ultra-wideband into it so it can communicate with the phone, and that will be even faster. So my hope is that that's what they'll do. I don't know, but that seems like the most sensible way to keep the phone sealed. Team Kinetics asks, iCave Answers, could we see Apple make their own Apple Silicon eGPU that could plug into smaller or lower powered Apple Silicon Macs? Could this be another potential use for bin chips? I'd love to see a Thunderbolt dock or external monitor that increases the power of a MacBook when it was plugged in. Honestly, I think the most likely thing that Apple will do is not an eGPU as such or something along those lines, but the option to have a Mac Mini that sits on your desk at home, and then you can use your MacBook when you're out and about on its own power, and then when you get home, perhaps you can plug it into a higher performance Mac Mini that's on your desktop and use the power of both together. If we're going to be getting into duo chips, there will be at least software support for these things working together. Will it be as quick and as seamless as when you're using a duo? No, but over Thunderbolt you will get pretty close to that performance, certainly a lot closer than you get with just a MacBook. So if they're going to do it, that would be my expectation. I can't see them building it into a display, because at that point the display is an iMac. Maybe that's how you do it. Maybe the iMac becomes your external display and it harnesses that power too. That's another possibility. Yuri asks, iCaveDave, do you believe that the budget 10th generation iPad will get a redesign instead of the 11th generation iPad, despite leaks saying it won't? I don't think so, as we've got the iPhone SE coming with what looks to be the same design as the current one. It looks like the iPhone 11-esque design has been pushed off to 2024, although there's leaks in both directions, rumours that are saying both. One of them is wrong. I think if we're going to keep the home button on those iPhones for the next couple of years, I don't think Apple will be in a rush to get rid of the home button on the iPad either. We could get the 10.5-inch redesign, which is the one that was the iPad Air. Is it needed? Probably not. Brian Data asks, iCave answers, Apple still has a long wait time, 6 to 8 weeks, on bespoke M1 Pro chipped MacBook Pros. Does this supply constraint delay the release of the M1 Pro chipped larger iMac or the M1 Pro chipped Mini? Putting it another way, can Apple walk and chew gum? I don't think that the chips are in any way what's delaying this. I think it's purely the volumes that they're selling, much higher volumes than they've done of MacBook Pros in the past. It just makes a lot of sense to me that it's purely a case of probably the displays being the biggest bottleneck here, and the display panels for the iMacs will be made on a different line. So I think we should be safe. Armin Dressler asks, iCave answers, and his fam, I assume Automator is a very powerful tool, but I have no idea what to automate. Do you have any ideas or examples of what to do with it? And I'll be honest, I'm not someone that's used Automator. I've not even really used shortcuts on iOS very much. It looks like shortcuts is what's going to take over from Automator on the Mac, so I wouldn't get too deep into the Automator side of things at this point, but I'm going to open this one up to the audience. Send me any examples of what you've automated on your Mac. There are definitely resources out there. I would say Rosemary Orchard, who does an automation podcast, is probably a really good place to start. Brad Wendes asks, iDad answers, our first baby is due this summer and very exciting. As a dad yourself, what advice can you give, Apple related or not? So from this point of view, I would say get as much sleep as you can now. That will change. Congratulations, of course. And I would just say don't judge yourself. And I know this is not going to be relevant to begin with, but once they get to the point where your child wants to use technology, let them. Don't judge yourself. Both of our kids have iPads. They don't spend their whole days on them, but we also don't limit time on them specifically. I think if we limited it in any kind of formal way, then that would just make it more difficult, whereas letting them use it as much as they want and then seeing that they will use it for a bit and then do other stuff, or my eldest has his iPad playing in the background while he does crafts or things like that. I don't think screen time in the way that people perceive it is the problem that everyone thinks, and if your kids aren't up to date with technology, they're going to struggle when they get to school and in the real world, because that's where technology exists. Remember when we were at school and we were told not to use calculators for maths because we would never have like a calculator in our pocket all the time? We do. Technology moves on. Technology makes things better. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of technology for your kids. And on that bombshell, thank you so much for watching. I'm iCaveDave. I'm again wearing the Cupertino collection. You know you love it. Thanks to all the Patreons, and we'll see you in the next one.